Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 25th of May. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. More jail time for former Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. The Jerusalem District Court today sentenced Olmert to spend 8 months behind bars after being found guilty of fraud charges in the Morris Talansky retrial. The 69-year-old former politician was convicted in March of illegally receiving at least $150,000 from the New York businessman between 1993 and 2002 while serving as the mayor of Jerusalem. This latest jail term is Olmert's second and comes in addition to the 6 years that he was sentenced to serve on other bribery charges related to the Holy Land real estate scandal. Olmert is appealing the Holy Land sentence at the High Court and has now announced his plans to appeal the Talansky sentence as well. Both of those processes will have to be exhausted before the former Prime Minister begins his prison term. In other news, Antitrust Commissioner David Gilo has announced his decision to resign his post at the end of August. The decision comes amid disputes with top governmental leaders over competition in the natural gas market. Gilo said that his decision stems from reports that the Prime Minister's office, the Finance Ministry, and the Energy Ministry would not support his compromise proposal regarding competition in the natural gas sector. 2 weeks ago, he presented a plan aimed at solving an ongoing dispute that has largely frozen new gas development since December. Turning to politics, and a new minister is now set to join the cabinet after a small standoff, although that leaves another minister without a seat. And there's also a new Director General of the Foreign Affairs Ministry. Here with all the latest is IBA's political correspondent, Ellie Wogelenter.
It took a little bit of time and a little bit of dickering back and forth, but Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has sealed the offer co-opting Gilad Erdan to accept the public security portfolio. The cabinet is set to vote by phone today on giving Erdan a bolstered public security portfolio, membership in the Security Cabinet, possibly the Ministry of Strategic Affairs, control over the Israel Broadcast Authority, and membership in an inner security cabinet that will be created later. For Erdan to join the cabinet, one minister would have to leave, and that will most likely be Minister without portfolio, Benny Begin. And Netanyahu announced another appointment today. His longtime advisor, Dori Gold, will become Director General of the Foreign Ministry. A former ambassador to the United Nations and currently head of the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, Gold will replace Nissim Ben-Shitrit. The American-born Gold is considered one of Netanyahu's top foreign policy confidants, serving as Netanyahu's foreign policy advisor from 1996 to 1997 during the premier's first term in office. Netanyahu then appointed Gold ambassador to the UN, where he served until 1999. By appointing Gold, Netanyahu has put a close ally into a key position in the ministry, which seems to indicate Netanyahu's wish to bring the foreign ministry solidly under his control, despite his promise to his new deputy foreign minister, Tzipi Hotovely, that she will be vested with full control over running the foreign ministry. Gold's appointment marks yet another religious American immigrant being appointed to a high-level position surrounding the prime minister. Gold follows Ambassador Ron Dermer, Chief of Staff Ari Harrow, and Eli Groner, who last week was named Director General of the Prime Minister's office. Erin?
Thanks for that report. Ariel Ronis is being laid to rest in Kfar Saba today after committing suicide on Saturday after a Facebook post accused him of racism and went viral. The Shin Bet Security Service veteran was employed at the Interior Ministry's Population, Immigration and Border Crossing Authority, which today closed its doors in solidarity. It was there that the alleged incident took place, which ultimately led to Rona's death. Last Wednesday, Leah Limori, who is of African ethnicity, posted an account describing why she felt racially profiled for being told to stand with her children in a long line while other mothers who were white were directed to a shorter queue. Ronis dismissed her claims of discrimination, but Limori's Facebook post was shared over 7,000 times, making the 47-year-old manager the subject of vicious condemnation in the social media. Before taking his own life by a self-inflicted gunshot in his Hod HaSharon home, Ronis wrote that for years he dedicated his life to equality for all and worked to make a good name for himself, which was now equated with the vilest of terms, racism. All my life's work has at once vanished, he wrote, with the thrust of a word. There has been nationwide shock over Rona's death. Earlier today, I spoke by telephone with Times of Israel new media editor Sarah Tuttle Singer, who frequently addresses online harassment in her own work and has been the target of it as well. I asked her how common it is here in Israel that social media comments could have a deep and immediate negative impact on a person's life.
I think that the effects of social media and the good things and the bad things can be felt throughout the world, certainly in Israel, where we are super connected with applications like WhatsApp and Facebook and Twitter. In this country where we have this need to know what's going on at all times because, I mean, let's be real, we live in a place where that can mean the difference between life and death. I feel like we're more connected than a lot of other countries, but certainly we see this throughout the world.
To what do you account for this level of online hate?
You know, I'm still trying to figure that out. And I see online hate take many shapes, many forms, whether it's anti-Semitism, whether it's racism in any form, whether it's sexist comments, or just plain, mean, nasty personal attacks on people. I think that we feel somehow safe behind our avatars, behind our screen names, even though they're linked to our account. Facebook or social media becomes an extension of part of our personality. It's not the only thing that defines us, but it certainly is part of who we are. And I think that some people use that as a release mechanism to let some of that nasty out. But on the flip side, there are also people who are doing such great things using social media and championing incredible causes to make this world a better place.
Good point. Now, you know, Facebook, for example, does have a function that users can click on if they want to report online abuse. What more do you think can be done against just purely hateful posts?
First of all, that function, while lovely, doesn't always work.
Right.
I know people report pages calling for the destruction of Israel, for example, and many times they are ignored. I also know people who've been bullied online, who've reported people who have not been dealt with by Facebook. I think that the best course of action is just someone is hurting you online, take screenshots so you have a record and block them and just don't engage with them, but have that record still and maybe have a friend keep track of things they might be saying and taking screenshots if you've decided to block them out, just so you're in the know if something really terrible or defaming comes up.
And know when to close your computer.
Yeah, know when to close your computer, too, because not engaging is sometimes the best course of action. And people, and I can tell you from my own personal experience, people do get tired of being mean. It happens. They move on to a new target. And one way to avoid making it worse is to just ignore, shut the computer down, block them, let it go as much as you can.
The remand of the 19-year-old Palestinian suspected of stabbing two Jerusalem teenagers on Saturday night has been extended until the end of the month. The two 17-year-old victims were attacked on Beit Chabad Street near the Damascus Gate while heading toward the Western Wall for an all-night Torah study session as part of observance for the Shavuot holiday. After examining security footage in the area, investigators tracked the suspect to his home in the Old City, where they also discovered the knife that they believe he used to stab the victims. Turning to Belgium, where hundreds of people paid homage to the four victims killed 1 year ago at the Brussels Jewish Museum. There was a heavy security presence as crowds placed flowers and lit candles in memory of the Israeli couple Emmanuel and Miriam Riva, a French woman and a Belgian man who were shot to death by a gunman who opened fire inside the building. Politicians attending the ceremony included Belgian Prime Minister Charles Michel, who said that his nation and all of Europe have entered a new era where radicalism and terrorism threaten civilians and citizens' security. While he acknowledged that the authorities know that they can never ensure zero risk, he insisted that it is possible to take measures to reinforce security, which is what Belgium is doing. Investigators believe that the French national Mehdi Nemmouche carried out that shooting after spending most of 2013 fighting in Syria with Islamic rebels. He remains in Belgian custody since his extradition from France in July after being arrested in Marseille last May. Islamic State forces continue to advance in both Iraq and Syria, and as the terrorists gain momentum, there are renewed questions over the need for U.S. intervention. Reporter Alexandra Jen has been following the developments.
First, Iraqi forces retreated from ISIS in Ramadi. Then, Syrian troops suffered the same fate in Palmyra just days later. Now, the death toll between civilians and soldiers in both countries has climbed into the hundreds and counting. It is reported that the Islamic State is recklessly executing anyone who has ties to the government, police, or army, even hospital personnel, including men, women, and children. Washington is searching for answers as U.S. Defense Secretary Ash Carter claims that Iraqi troops are to blame for the fall of Ramadi. Though they far outnumbered ISIS militants, the Iraqi fighters withdrew, lacking a will to fight. This raises concerns that Iraq may be ill-equipped in arms, training, and motivation to take on ISIS.
Our efforts now are devoted to providing their ground forces with the equipment, the training, and to try to encourage their will to fight so that our campaign enabling them can be successful both in defeating ISIL and keeping ISIL defeated in a sustained way.
Because the U.S. is supplying arms to Iraqi forces, fears of tanks and other weaponry falling into ISIS hands are escalating. The U.S. has also deployed 3,000 troops to Iraq, including trainers and advisors, to aid local forces. However, the American troops do not engage in combat as a preventative measure to keep the U.S. from being dragged into another ground war. The Sunni Islamic militants are steadily gaining momentum as they push toward Baghdad. An eastward advance puts them in close proximity to oil and gas fields, control of which could potentially lead to more financial backing. They already control over half of Syria. Shortly after Palmyra was taken, the Tunif border town fell to ISIS. Then, the city of Al-Husayba, 17 kilometers east of Ramadi. In a small victory, Iraq held off an ISIS attack in al-Haldiya. Afterwards, Iraqi forces, alongside Shiite militias and Sunni tribal fighters, liberated the city of Al-Husayba, a key stronghold for Iraq, as it is only 20 kilometers west of Habaniya, home to an Iraqi military base, a strategic location from which Iraqi forces are hoping to launch an offensive to regain control of Ramadi and the rest of the Anbar province. Meanwhile, in Damascus, Syrian troops are preparing for a counteroffensive to take back the ancient city of Palmyra, containing priceless historic relics. Syria has been striking ISIS forces in Palmyra from the air. But without feet on the ground, ISIS is likely to retain control and could carry out its threat to leave this world treasure in ruins. Alexandra Jen for IBA News.
Today marks 1 month since the devastating earthquake in Nepal that claimed the lives of more than 8,000 people. The Israeli public were directly concerned over the welfare of their citizens visiting the Asian country at the time, including one who became a fatality. But there was also great pride in the creation of an IDF field hospital to alleviate the suffering. The staff included 5 unsung heroes who helped their patients to smile again. IBA's Ari O'Sullivan brings us the story.
The vegetable and flower vendors have come back to the markets in Kathmandu. But the rubble from the 7.8 magnitude earthquake that rocked this country is ubiquitous. People are living in tents in open fields or wherever they can lay their heads down, slowly trying to get their lives back in order. Men scavenge the ugly ruins as the government takes its slow steps in the reconstruction process.
It's been a month after the 7.4 Richter scale earthquake. We are feeling pretty rough right now. We are assuming that there will be another earthquake, a big earthquake, because our country is like that kind of country. There is mountain.
Many children have lost their families and are suffering, reaching out for a bubble of hope. Only days after the earthquake, Israel rushed a field hospital to Nepal to help the injured. Joining the doctors and medics was a group of 5 Israeli medical clowns. Sancho, Max, Duce, Fruma, and Shemish, armed with just a red nose, work daily to administer their medicine. From the most pitiful place on earth after the earthquake and the chaos of Nepal, they were able to spread a little cheer and offer a welcome respite from the tensions. David Dush Barashi says that all it takes is one smiling face and the destruction isn't relevant. I'm not looking how they fell, but how we can help them up, he says. It's been over a month since the earthquake and the world has moved on, but those who were there and met face-to-face with the Nepalese have trouble cutting off even after they return. Nimrod Max Eisenberg recalls how he was making kids laugh with his antics, and then one just breaks down in tears, which made him aware of his own limitations. And it wasn't only kids who sought out the clowns, but adults too who suffered from post-trauma and asked for help. Smadar Shemesh Harpak says one of the clowns used a clicker to ease a woman's chest pains. And then villagers hungry for treatment lined up to receive his magical cure. Although less than a dozen, they were able to bring a bright light to the children and adults in Nepal, which only proves that sometimes laughter is the best form of medicine. Ari O'Sullivan for IBA News.
Returning now to the Belgian Jewish Museum attack, which is only one example of the increasingly violent anti-Semitism sweeping across Europe and the world. This according to NGO Monitor's Professor Gerald Steinberg, who spoke with IBA's Eli Wogelenter during the recent Global Forum for Combating Anti-Semitism held in Jerusalem.
The last couple of years since the last World Conference was held, there's been a lot more very violent anti-Semitic attacks. There's a lot more verbal attacks on Jews, on Jewish community, on Israel's right to exist. All of these things have been growing very significantly. What we heard from Prime Minister Netanyahu last night was the very strong, important recognition that in order to defeat this, we also have to cut off the funding. Those who fund anti-Semitism, those who give Amnesty money so that they have employees who tweet anti-Semitic phrases, the fact that Amnesty International, out of 17 resolutions that were introduced in its annual conference, only one was defeated, and that was to undertake a study of anti-Semitism. This is a sickness, and all those organizations, powerful organizations, United Nations, Amnesty, Human Rights Watch, all those groups that contribute in different ways to anti-Semitism, the Prime Minister, and I think the broad consensus in this conference is those also have to be taken off. That's the new takeaway from this conference.
The war this past summer in Gaza, how much did that impact on the spread of hate and anti-Semitism worldwide?
There's no doubt that it went up yet another notch with the hatred of Israel. When you hear terms in Paris, in Copenhagen, in London, and other cities of Israelis are war criminals, Israelis violate the human rights of Palestinians, Israelis are responsible for deliberately killing children, all of that hate language, all of that, the best term for that is lies. And there's an industry that manufactures those lies, and that leads directly to the type of killing that we saw in Paris, in Copenhagen, in Toulouse, and other places. And unfortunately, in many of the European capitals and many of the decision-making bodies in Europe, there's a refusal to recognize the obvious fact that the hatred of Israel that they help to fuel is also leading to much greater attacks of anti-Semitism.
Final issues discussed at the conclusion of the World Economic Forum on the Middle East and North Africa, held on the Jordanian side of the Dead Sea this weekend, included the highly problematic unemployment of youth in the region. One of the forum's senior directors, Miroslav Tusek, said that business leaders from Israel and the Palestinian Authority were also there in efforts to come up with solutions to the conflict between the two peoples.
Business leaders from Israel and Palestine have met here and committed themselves to continue their efforts toward a two-state solution by proposing civic society-led initiatives to the conflict despite the current diplomatic impasse. We believe this is an absolutely key issue for all of us. No one can afford to stay on the margins. No one can afford to be a distant observer.
The Anti-Defamation League is honoring American pop sensation Lady Gaga and her Born This Way Foundation with its Making a Difference Award for the launching of the No Place for Hate initiative, committed to creating a kinder environment in schools. Israelis have long appreciated the artist, born as Stephanie Germanata, for speaking out on behalf of the country, particularly against its often negative portrayal in the media. She has also criticized the Boycott Israel movement and equated it with bias and bullying. Over the weekend, Lady Gaga posted a message of thanks to the ADL.
Your philosophies are so in line with ours. We want to help young people know that their feelings and who they are on the inside is very important to everyone. And we want to do everything we can to make them feel strong and happy and know that they deserve a kinder and braver life. Youth, for me, are part of a kinder and braver world because they, through their stories, have the ability to change things. It just takes one story to inspire someone to be nicer in class. It takes one story to inspire someone to keep going that wants to give up. It takes one story to change somebody's life. This is something I believe because I've witnessed it firsthand, having my own life be changed by so many young, impressive young people I've met all over the world. So thank you so much for everything that you have been doing over the past 100 years, and congratulations and thank you to the millions of students in New York and across the country who have committed to taking a stand against bias and bullying through ADL's No Place for Hate program. Continue what you're doing. Never stop. Passion is the most beautiful thing that there is, and passion for spreading kindness, there's nothing better.
Hapoel Tel Aviv in the capital and hosts Maccabi Rishon LeZion will attempt to put away Hapoel Holon. Now taking a look at local finance, and there was no foreign currency trading today due to holidays abroad, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were mixed. Here's a look at the afternoon numbers. Turning to the weather, which will continue to be unseasonably hot and dry, with Sharav desert heat wave conditions prevailing throughout most of the country tomorrow. Here's the forecast at home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. We hope you'll join us again tomorrow, same time, same channel, when Laura Cornfield will be here with the latest breaking news from Israel. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.